this is, have to hit, got it. We are the editors of Airlie Press. Airlie Press is a nonprofit collective since 2009. The press publishes 3 titles each year of fine contemporary poetry. 2 of the titles are from Pacific Northwest poets. These Northwest poets, excuse me, are from the Pacific Northwest, and they in turn become editors for the press for a tenure of 3 years. We also publish 1 Airlie Prize book a year from a national search. My name is Amelia Ettinger. I'm one of the editors presently with Airlie Press. I am in my last year of the press. And I will be reading from my Airlie Press book, Learning to Love a Western Sky. And that's the back image that you see. The first poem is called San Juan Night. San Juan is a festival in Puerto Rico on June 23rd. And we celebrate John the Baptist. And at midnight, and I have no idea why, the families gather at the beach and jump into the ocean on their backs. San Juan Night. On a different ocean, my children dance, hands enveloped in foam. Their rhythm is a booming from youth. My son with wonder yells, "Mom, look!" In the black horizon, we see a night whale breaking surface. Calmness among the carnival. By the way, all the poems that you will be hearing are on the chat on a PF form. My second poem, is A Day of the Dead, which is a festival that has grown popularity and knowledge in the United States for a while. Here, the voice of the poet explores the loss of togetherness in living in such a northern climate. Día de los Muertos, Noviembre 1 y 2. Dew covers this gray day. Light struggles to reach ground, but coal has no trouble filling space with living remains. Coal whispers its name at night in the coyote's call, at dawn, the bugling elk, the slowing heartbeat of a dying friend. Autumn of fog, the meadow covered by a smoke screen of images so real. Father and child locked in an eternal dance, their forlorn silence taste of mold, incense, and marigolds. There are no altars this far north, no carpets of yellow petals to lead the way. Could you find your way to me? Cold then becomes my friend, a blue endearing hand that sits and steals my shoulder as you once did. Dew now descends, the maple, fir, home, give rest. But I don't want to just read kind of sad, nostalgic poems. So I'm going to read Ode to Nicolas Guillen, Sensemaya, which Sensemaya is a poem that is by this Afro-Cuban poet that we adored when I was growing in the island. And he uses a lot of onomatopoeic sounds and Yoruba words. Most of the Blacks from the Caribbean, at least in Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic, were originally brought as slaves from Yoruba. They're from the Yoruba tribe. Ode to Nicolas Guillen Sensemaya. How would it be to hear the song that kills the snake? Would it be the whistle of a goat hooves spinning on a dancer's neck? the sound of distant drums from your glorious pen. Sensemaya, generations follow your path to the snakes. Your rhythm forged in Africa, your yearning light that makes roots bite the red soil, and the grass to hide the snake, the land, the music, the food of your forefathers. Balm of Cuba in every stanza. Your words a gift to El Caribe Negro, now cast in mortar and steel. Could this Caribbean see the snake's glass eyes? Here, Manjombe Bombe, sing your song to kill the snake. Mayombe Bombe, Mayombe Bombe, Mayombe. Now, in my mind, mythologies sometimes grow from dreams. So I'm gonna read you this poem, Last Night, which is the yearning of youth coming through a dream. Last night, returning to youth across dark fog, the distance is long and the foot falters. Open the iron gates, rusted by dreams. A motherless girl plays alone, her hair luminous. She has no eyes, but shadows for lashes, inert upon her cheeks. Mouth red and round, loose at its ends, she cries. At the bottom of the walk, there is a guava tree. The girl sits in its lap sighing. Her braids are made by a gentle breeze. She stiffens her tender shoulders. Thoughts hidden, watching the fog lift as the moment quavers. She seeks solace and climbs the fruiting tree. And before I finish, I want to just finish with this last poem, which I'm going to leave you, is the most wonderful of wonders to me is the secret language of trees underneath their roots and how trees help each other even after death. And this is white fir for a tree that I have in my backyard that is alive only by the grace of its neighbors. White fir, cambion gone from generations, making her center home. She stands alone and surrounded, living. On the generosity of neighbors, these young trees, less experienced, fluent and silent strong, still times has behollowed, feed her sap, a communal photosynthesis. This richness under her soil extends for miles, intertwined by the power of Haifa, the alien, that holds each root in prayer, that makes this forest whole. This old fir, she stands. Thank you. And next will be Brittney Corrigan reading from her book of Airlie Press. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Give me 1 second. I'm also the tech person here and making sure we get spotlighted here. Thank you all for coming. And I hope you'll stick around afterwards as well. When each of us, when we're done reading, we'll have a Q&A at the end and you can have an opportunity to have some conversation with us, which I think will be great. So I'm going to read to you from my Airlie Press book, Daughters, which are all persona poems in the voices of various daughters from mythology, folklore, and popular culture sometimes. And I'm going to introduce you to 3 of the daughters today. So the first one is Minotaur's daughter. My mother's inner compass never falters. If the king had known her gift for navigation, he might have set her to a fitting task. But beauty veils from men the truest center, and so he sent her in to be devoured. Fear was a thing my mother cast before her like torchlight. The walls were but quarry stones, ordinary and smooth. The smell of the bull, familiar as her farm. Just another earthy beast to feed and tend. So, when my father's breath fired beside her as she stepped within the labyrinth's heart, my mother simply offered up her palm like an apple to a horse. She gentled his horns, bowed his startled head, and laid her brow to his. Violence makes of the world a maze. Consider my grandfather, the white bull, how his life was spared from sacrifice. Consider my grandmother, cursed with unnatural love, and their beast child consumed with hunger. In every civil man hides a beast. In every maddened beast sleeps the heart of a child. My monstrous father cradled me with kindly arms, tucked the softness of my curls against the coarse hairs of his chest. Now, from the labyrinth center, we watch the architect's son fall back to earth, waxy feathers dropping away from the sun. Even the sky is a cage. My mother maps us to her. She knows the way out, but won't say. Right. Daughter number 2. She's my personal favorite. This is Alien Abductee's daughter. My mother isn't a sci-fi movie 1960s housewife drying her hands on her apron as she half sleepwalks into the yard where there's a bright beam waiting to levitate her through the whipping wind kind of gal. She makes grilled cheese sandwiches sensibly with butter on both sides and pickles and tomato soup. She reads novels of literary merit, maybe a little magical realism thrown in, but not enough to make her moony. She believes in ghosts, it's true, the same way she believes in mathematics. The beauty of theories and formulations, the attempt to enumerate all things, black holes, gravity, planetary orbits and tides, weather, dark matter, energy. What I'm saying is, I believe her. If she lost time, it likely was because of the UFO. I mean, she's not an invents bedtime stories kind of mom. There's nothing impossible about it. It all comes down to simple math. Listen, my father's not really my father. That's what I'm trying to tell you. When he's gone, we know exactly where he goes. You can smell it on his clothes, sour and sloppy. My mother was returned only slightly disheveled and carrying me. See, my skin has a shimmery gray undertone. Just look at my whopping green eyes. We don't need my father anymore. They're coming back for us. I can feel it. That's why my mother stands in the yard every night, crying, holding my hand. We're certain. We know the lights will come. All right, and I'm going to end with a little more mythology here this afternoon for some of us. This is Siren's daughter. Our songs are not for you. My mother didn't teach me to lilt a lyric from my throat, to crest a note from my tongue, in order to enthrall or summon a man. Such conceit, to think a goddess would sing of men's deeds. We sing for the same reason cranes sing, or the deepening wails, or a whole fierce chorus of wolves. I wish all of you would bind your rough and yearning bodies to the masts of your figure-headed ships, sails abeat in the salty wind breaking the waves. Because truth be told, I've had enough of your maddening inability to keep your hearts and hands to yourselves. Your excuses puddle round your boots. But still you come. My mother says men cannot leave a thing of beauty to unfurl of its own accord. You must always lean in and pluck it, roots and all, no matter the withering. So we have to make our homes among the sharpest rocks. We have to pick the roughest whorl of seas. And if we draw your ships to smithereens, well, that will not keep us from singing. All right, thanks you all. And next up is my wonderful colleague, Connie.
Thank you. My name is Connie Soper. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I am in my second year with Airlie Press, which means that my first book of poetry will be published in September of this year. And it's starting to feel kind of real because we've just landed on a cover image for it, and it's all getting put together. Anyway, I'm going to read three books, three poems from that book. The title of my book is called A Story Interrupted, and partly I named it that because some of these poems were written many years ago, and I took a long break from writing and resumed a couple of years ago. So it is interrupted, but it's going to keep going. And the first poem I'm going to read is one of those very early poems, and it's called The Art of Careful Pruning. The leaves have grown too dense, touching roofs, stealing light from the windows. The neighbor and I want them tamed, but not too much. The tree trimmer nods, having heard this before. He says he's for hire, notch by notch. He cinches the buckle on his harness and shimmies up the tree. Lean and supple as a birch, he carries an uncommon strength in his shoulders. He surveys the uncut canvas of this job, arranging shades of green with clips from his tool. Every limb he shaves drops the sky a little closer. From my window, I watch the neighbor water to the edge of his property, his spotted dog barking at the base of the tree. Ours is not a boundary of substance. What's his is his, and his is there, and mine is here. He glances up as if he hears me think. What does he see? A woman writing at a table, crossing tasks off her list. We need these trees, need the tangle of new growth to obscure the ordinary, even as we cut it back again and again. This next poem I'm going to read is called Nastucka Spit. September's gone, drifting into a season measured by what's lost or missing. Light, leaves, summer's long dreams. Blackberries shrivel on unruly vines, late for picking. We too are dying a little more. No cure but to hike the long strand of beach straddling ocean and bay. The spit brushed in its own barren beauty, hillocks, dunes, seagrass swaying brown upon brown. Shore pines lean into their wind-sculpted shapes. Kelp and foam script an alphabet on blank slate of sand, while the bay, fed by river, nourishes wetlands behind the dunes. Amorphous drizzle materializes from nothing. Within our bodies, organs swell and recede in the rhythm of salty currents, coming to rest against a shore of ribcage. Persuaded, perhaps, by the same celestial power pulling these tides. Tonight, a harvest moon will blaze its apple-sweet light over and into the living waves, fill in what's left of our footprints. Land ends where the churning channel begins. No boat to row, too wild to swim. And while many of my poems are rooted in Oregon, especially at the coast, I have a number of poems in my collection about other places I've traveled. And this is one of them called Terminus. So many old European cities promised cathedrals and castles, stayed in stately rooms where treaties were signed. Always an ornate architecture, rich with patina copper domes, steeples and turrets. When my feet tired of museums bragging ancient relics, And when a polluted hot noise pressed down over the somber monuments, I boarded a bus, any bus, paid a few pesos, drachmas, centimes, and rode to the end of the line. Not for the journey itself or its destination, but for the sake of not knowing where it would take me as the bus lurched into unmapped margins of a city. Grand avenues blooming geraniums gave way to glimpses of villages within the metropolis, lively with cafes, blue uniformed children. Every neighborhood's pride its plaza. Boys circled footballs in the ragged handkerchief of a field as pigeons shook themselves from the belfry at sonorous sounds of bells ringing the evening mass. One by one, passengers disembarked until the bus arrived at the end of its route. Terminus, the driver called out. Same word I learned in so many languages. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Jennifer Reimer.
Hello. Happy spring, everyone. My name is Jennifer Reimer, and I'm in Bend, Oregon. Like Connie, I'm in my second year with the press, which means, like Connie, my book will be coming out in September. This will be my second full-length book of poetry. The book is called Keşke. I'm not Turkish, but keşke is a Turkish word. It means, it expresses a wish and a longing. It can be roughly translated to if only. I lived and worked in Turkey for 5 years, including during the year 2016, which was the year of the failed coup attempt and a series of heightened terrorist attacks throughout Ankara and Istanbul. And a lot of the book draws from those events and also goddesses. Cave wall, absent landscape, where even this cave, tide pulled source material, pockmarked cliff face, buried white. This is not a poem about the moon, a stone set into stone, or any number of days in the visible terrain of passing ships, or her wrecked wishes, echo, locations in silence. İstiklal Caddesi. Can you name every girl you've kissed? You write this down so you won't forget to ask next time. List yours on the back of a Turkish Airlines boarding pass, astonished at columns, forgetting and remembering in ballpoint. There's another list too, longer than you thought. A surprise, really. The picture posted, now 5 years old. It's starting to show, you said. Cycle of account for, cycle of causality. Yes, things that happened long ago still matter. Boxes in a garage in California, pieces of languages you knew, now words, mostly nouns, a certain mouth rhythm. You don't know the past tense for keşke, wind for hair or shapes for words, how you liked the sound of the call to prayer when it all came down to the horrible dress you would not have wanted to wear, past conditional, past continuous. She was waiting. Now, again, the Bosphorus, this channel, this throat-choked city, wait here for no one. Even the textile man will not remember your name. And why should you taste like Kalajik Karasa when by all accounts you don't drink wine? You watch the ferries come and go, swoop of swallow, plum tree against old stone. Tonight, tense change. You will put on a dress and dance on a rooftop, and you will kiss a man you do not love, who probably loves you, and you will wish it would have been. Keşke 16. She, saltless, shape-shifting, river nymph, ruins empire of red, where red meets river, blood burnished. She, affective aperture, water, river, old stone, city, island, light box. She chases, sees, shadow, stone, words, other fallen empires, church bells, counter, spell, exposure, time. Take this picture, colonnaded, the Roman baths. She dives deeply, minerals, geology, all effects of affect dissolve. Diameter, distance, dissolve, see blasted stone, nymph. Maria, her empire, and all the many Marias, pray for us sinners now and in the hour of our need. She. This poem is dedicated to one of the guests in our audience today. Neshkobir. You learn the rhythm by the third day. Erai raises and lowers the anchor. Mehmet drives the boat and you write, Keshke. Remember the sound of water, taxis, boat to boat. In the evening, air haunted by the taste of salt, skin. The sun sets port side, grilled shrimp and raka. How could we help having more than enough? Keshke. Andriaki Harbor in the morning. You watch sea turtles, fish, things spoken as unspoken, give us away. You broke your vow of sobriety to dance barefoot. That green before green before green we perceive as air. Do you like American music? Your best friend texts, you are every music video ever. Why then, on the fourth day, Roman ruins slide starboard, you wonder if you could come for days. The passengers mistake you for crew. Neshko named for his dead grandfather, his father dead when he was 3 years old. No, he doesn't tell you all about it. The old house, working the boat at 13, the uncle, the drunk stepfather who beats his mother, who was angry today because he didn't come home. Last night you slept on the boat. He wakes you early. The Turkish word of the day is nefis, part of speech, adjective, nefisti. That was delicious. You tell yourself that someday you'll learn past tense. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm very thrilled to invite our last but not least reader, Charity Yoro.
Thanks, Jennifer. And thank you everyone for coming. It's great to read today. It's my first reading of this year. I am excited to be here. I'm one of the newer Airlie editors. And my book is 10 Cent Flower in Other Territories, and it's forthcoming. It's coming out next year, 2023. We recently welcomed our second daughter to the family 2 blurry months ago. So I realize now that the poems I selected to read are sort of along this theme of, they all kind of have this theme of origin and legacy. The first is Her Inheritance, and it begins with 2 epigraphs. The first is, I wish my poems could save us from our parents' childhoods. Sarah Borjas. Sooner or later, history catches up. Erica Hunt. 1/2 of 1/3 of the axis of evil, a carcinogenic preference, acquired taste for plastic, screaming a way through, the color blue, broken coral, a collection of smooth graves, a collection of smooth rocks to lay on an unmarked grave. Soft nails that tear at the quick, hurried step across busy streets to an indifferent greeting, no one knows how to pronounce your name. Fascination with flame and glass and sand and tail and chasing flight, pointer finger fixed toward the sky. A thrice history of fleeing, 1/4 refinanced, 1/4 reverse mortgaged, 1/4 rented with roommate, 3/4 on the spectrum of unemployed, bill unpaid, under sheets of red marked paper, births under balance owed, decrepit credit score, before even learning to count. Ichi, ikahi. What to say when a stranger offers candy? I say, salamat po, mama. This next poem is called Still Image of a Murmuration, and it begins with an epigraph as well by Lucia Estrada. Mistake the bald eagle for a drone. Poison the hummingbird with sugar water solution. There in the pollen-laden fur, standing tall in the untended backyard, the woodpecker with a head of auburn unlike anything you've ever seen. Some days you glorify its consequence before recalling codependency a curse word. Most days it takes a village. Remember that starling passing over TV highway under the crossed electrical lines. The flock was swift and efficient, but the little guy caught up. Look at him go. They landed in the wetland. Past the intersection, you released your breath. The bees are out being, while the cat disturbs a nest of sparrows in the tangle of knobby branches lacing the connecting fence. Black ball of anticipation. Under this jurisdiction, before you learn no one is protected, the flock is loud with warning. This next poem is Oratory. It is a language that takes up space, pouring out car windows, steamy, spilling out into wet streets, taking up whole lanes with its swagger, a laughter that doesn't pretend, so assured in its articulation of joy. A song you can hear playing too loud, too late through paper walls, makes you smile in spite of yourself. Tap your toe on the soft carpet. Imagine your feet are the pair gliding over linoleum tiles, and your waist, the one led in late night figurations while the water boils. Bellissima. You, in the kitchen corner, amused, tolerated, yet never invited to the table, pretending like you don't care, being ignored while you watch everything vigilant, hungry. You don't cross streets. Don't know how to look both ways, and perhaps no one has ever taught you. Is it true that there is no language that exists among you, that you'll eat whatever is left over, that you're a good girl who never mews, but your pride fills rooms, walls that don't talk back, instead breathe thinly in the background? I recognize your hollow, how you long to be lion. And this last piece is a series poem called Origin Story, and it's a series of self-portraits. Self-portrait as letter and number. The hollow of my belly, the hollow of our bedroom reflecting this new body pleading, I, not wanting to lose my definition, the shape straightening into an uppercase vowel, surprising us both with its new sound. Self-portrait as cold, beautiful house. That strange triplex with its Victorian crowd molding, dancing light, staircase leading to nowhere. I didn't think I deserved a kitchen island, my name above the street named after a sturdy tree, and that tender gesture when we signed the lease. Before leaving, I woke up repeating a phrase in a language that made sense in my dream. Phase figure 5 in the pitch of blue, the key. Self-portrait as gloam. I follow the tread on sand, trace, black, release the shutter, crop a caravan of lifted trucks from the frame, post the caption home, though I don't know its real name, just the geotag. Self-portrait as Mohalu. We would listen to Willie K at Hi'ia Pier in the back of his mom's van with the old fishermen and Kahalu chronics and electric eels. I used to sneak into his room, makeshift, built beneath his family's home, stilted between Hollow Field and Fish Pond. In the middle of the night, that left turn off Johnson Road broke a lot of collarbones. Once he dreamt I appeared in the dark at his door and sat at the foot of his bed, stroking his 6th toe. He woke up shivering, door thrown open to a silver cast field. There was that tree that his dad and his dad's dad kept cutting down, and then, but that's not my story to tell. self-portrait as mourning. Shelter nomad carrying itself slow across the slick path. I look for a deviation. I run toward the roar. I plan my next leap in the water before reaching the shoreline. Thank you so much. Really excited to open this up now to everyone for questions that you might have for Airlie Press and the editors.
And you can feel free to unmute and ask or jump them in the chat, either way.
I'll just go super quick. I don't have a question, but I'm Jesse Buell, and I'm sorry because I saw Michael had his hand raised, but I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say thank you. I've organized the Smol, and I'm really happy that you guys took part in it and everything. It means a lot, and I think it was really beautiful. As a thank you to everyone here, I am going to put in the chat my email. I'm happy to send you one of the book giveaways from Smol. So if you want one, shoot me an email, and as a thank you for coming to this reading, I'll send you a book. And thank you guys again for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I'm not visible right now, but I don't have my camera on. But I just wanted to echo what Jesse said. I thought that was really beautiful reading. I really enjoyed all of them. They were fantastic. And one of the things that I noticed is kind of a common thread among all of the poets who read today was a thinking through of sort of the nature of femininity and the question of gender. And I wonder if you all see sort of similarities and differences with each other in terms of the question of gender and how it kind of plays out in your poetics.
Wow, that's a really interesting question. Who wants to take a bite of that?
Well, I think I see some really obvious overlaps between Brittany's book and what I'm doing in the Keshke book, which is not particularly obvious in this reading, but a lot of what I do in that book is a rethinking of the Odyssey, particularly the character of Calypso, and wrapped up in Calypso or many other sort of goddess figures, watery goddesses from the sort of classical world region. And so I'm sort of rethinking and trying to embody in my book that voice or the voices of this goddess figure and think about her through a more contemporary lens. And I know that Brittany is also doing a similar but different thing in her book by imagining the daughters of characters from mythology and asking us or inviting us to also rethink these myths from the point of view of daughters and how that perspective might change what we think we know about these stories that we've heard, hundreds of times. So that's one obvious connection that comes to my mind along the lines of rewriting myth from a female and I would say feminist sort of perspective.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with that. I was with the daughters, one interesting thing that happened to me that even after writing the book made me sort of think about things. When I started this project, it was, the idea was to give voice to all these different daughters, whether they were daughters in difficult situations or not, but sort of rethinking their stories. And during the course of the publication, the production period of the book, my younger kiddo came out as trans, non-binary. And so for me, I've thought about it a lot even since writing the poems about whether or not I would have even written this book in the same way or at all if that hadn't happened. And so that's made me rethink a lot of definitions of femininity and daughterhood and gender as well.
I would also say, and maybe this is because I was reading Connie's manuscript again last night, and one of the things that also struck me while reading through that book again are these moments where Connie and the manuscript calls attention to the fact that the speaker of these poems has not necessarily lived the life expected of the speaker as a woman. The speaker particularly writes about rejecting the idea of needing to be married to a man. And I think a lot of that book is also exploring, some of these, what are the alternatives, right, available to women who don't follow a particular prescribed trajectory for their lives. What sort of things, what opportunities are opened up to them, and what are closed. And the speaker in Connie's book has an amazing experience with the richness of the natural world and the freedom to travel. But there's also one poem in particular where that speaker is thinking about questions of motherhood and what does it mean to have a maternal feeling about someone or something when you yourself are not a mother. And so in those ways, I see Connie's book as also sort of thinking about, what does it mean, like Sarah Ahmed said, to live a feminist life?
Wow, thanks, Jennifer. You said things about my book I didn't even know were true. So I think some of my poems are written from the perspective of being a daughter, of being a sister, and of being an unmarried woman. That you're right, there's a kind of that theme going on. I don't think I deliberately set out to do that. I'm just kind of writing my own life experience, and that's what happened.
Well, I hope we answer your question, Michael. Any other questions or observations?
Looks like Lauren has her hand up.
I deeply admire the Airlie Press editorial model and process. I don't know of any other press that runs like yours, and certainly not in my home state of Oregon. Jennifer, you just spoke so beautifully to Connie's manuscript. I'm wondering what else you, all of you, have learned from one another.
That's definitely the beauty of this model of press. So I'm in my 3rd year in the press, and we come in and sort of the way it works is the first year you're sort of learning the ropes and meeting people and being mentored, and the 2nd year you're really working on your book and the production of your book, and the 3rd year you're mentoring others, and 2 new people every year. And so for me, it's widened my literary community, which I really value. It's widened the readers of my work at this like close, attentive level, and also the experience of, we do everything by consensus at the press as well. And so it's for me been a wonderful experience in just learning about building relationships and community and coming to consensus and having, in-depth conversations and really thinking thoughtfully about things. And so those are some things I've learned from being at the press that have been a really wonderful experience for me personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's been kind of amazing that we each bring a different skill set to the collective. Some people are very skilled at social media and marketing, and that's not me. So luckily there are other people who can step in and do that. So, and a lot of the work we do is the work of any organization, keeping track of expenses, and that's what I do as I'm managing the budget. And so we all just kind of chip in, and it's yeah, I think we've learned a lot about when to say that we need help, or when we can step in and help someone else.
I think just to add to that, as one of the newer, so I just joined in this past November, member of the press. So I feel like what I've been learning from the rest of the editors has been mostly just, this is my first book, so a lot of these concepts are new, everything's new kind of to me. So I feel like this experience has just been teaching me so far about, just as Connie said, everyone has different experiences that they're bringing and also skill sets. And I think that it's really rich. It's very, it's just been teaching me a lot as a writer and as someone who will be marketing her book in the coming years, just what to expect. And
my colleagues have spoken about the process, the editorial process, and what it's like to work for a press. But I think for me, one of the things that's been, a really unexpected delight for me is just having a lot of the sort of preconceptions that I had about certain kinds of poetry challenged. And because in my day job, I'm an academic, and I have been surrounded for some years now within this sort of world of experimental poetry. And it's sort of like this kind of like little club, and we all think experimental poetry is, cooler than anything else. And if you had asked me a couple of years ago what kind of poems that I would not choose to read in my time off, I would have said nature poetry and persona poems. And working with the diversity of material that I've been exposed to, coming into Airlie has really shaken me out of that kind of snobby academic circle and reminded me that there's a lot of exciting work out there that takes a lot of different forms, and that I can like poems about nature. And there is persona poem writing that's not like cheesy, and so for me, it's just been wonderful to get back in touch with like the diversity of form and expression, and to read things that I wouldn't otherwise, probably make time for. That, and also I'm new to the Pacific Northwest, and I have really appreciated how much I've learned about the regional and sort of local literary scene from the folks at Airlie. It's been really wonderful to sort of learn from their mentorship about what are some of the resources and networks here in the region, which is, really, for me, I didn't really know. I mean, I knew Portland was cool, right? We all know Portland's cool, but I had no idea that places like, for instance, Central Oregon had such a rich and vibrant literary arts culture. And I'm very grateful to my colleagues for sort of shining a light on that.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you for that question. That actually, made me think. And Jennifer said something that alluded to what I was thinking. And one of the things that I have felt being part of an early editor that was a plus I didn't expect is that being the editor of this press has given me a freedom of experimentation that I didn't have before. And I think it's because you're so immersed into each book, and you have to read each book as it's coming in, and the manuscripts that come in that we peer review. And we discuss them, and it just, my background is science, and as a scientist, I never had this opportunity to have this collaboration, and in an environment that is supportive and allows you to experiment and expand, and just really opened my horizons as a writer, but not only as a writer, as a person. Any other questions? Brittany? And by the way, I want you to know that in the chat, Brittany has put in the poems and where we can get the books for Airlie Press, and do visit our website, and you can see all of our titles there.
And if any of you are our Pacific Northwest poets. In the summertime, we have our open reading period and that's for full-length poetry manuscripts, and that's for folks who want to publish their book with us as well as join the press for that 3-year stint as editors. So that's in the summertime. And then we just closed our Airlie Prize for this year. That's usually open January 1st to March 15th of every year, and that's open to anyone anywhere in the world writing in English full-length poetry manuscripts. So you can learn about those too, or send them to folks you think might be interested as well.
And I just want to thank all of you guys for tuning in with us this afternoon. It's a Sunday, and I know all of us have so many commitments and so many places we could be on a Sunday afternoon and evening. And it doesn't go unnoticed or unappreciated that you chose to spend an hour with us. So thanks each of you for choosing us today.
Thank you for coming, everyone.